Hey everyone, Andrew here, and I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of you that keep coming back to the show every other week. It means a lot, and we appreciate you for it. And with that said, please, if you feel that this show provides value and is helpful, just share it with someone if you think they can benefit from it. It's always our goal to help the community, and one simple way you can help us with that is just to let people know about Indie Game Movement. So that's all I got for now. So thank you again, and let's get to the show. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and this is episode 147, where we're going to be talking about how to nail publisher negotiations. Now, depending on your goals and resources, sometimes your best bet is getting a publisher. And after initial talks, once you receive an offer, there can be a lot of unknowns, especially when it comes to fully understanding how certain agreements can dictate your future. That's why today we have Tim Bender of Hooded Horse Games to share what to look out for and how to approach negotiations so you can be prepared and get the most out of your publishing agreement. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everybody, and we're back. Today we have Tim from Hooded Horse Games. Tim, how's it going, man?
Hi, Andrew. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely glad to have you here. So without further ado, Tim, I just want you to kind of take it away, share us what you do for Hooded Horse Games, kind of games that you publish, because you guys are a publisher, and anything else that you like to do in your personal life when you're not working.
Thanks, Andrew. Hooded Horse, we're a fairly new publisher. We have two upcoming titles right now. One is Terra Invicta, and the other is Alliance of the Sacred Sons. Both are space strategy games. Generally speaking, we're focused on strategy, simulation, and role-playing games. If it's role-playing, it's probably the kind that has strategic elements. So basically, strategy in a very broad sense. I run the company, also the founder. There's, of course, a couple other members of the board of directors, my investors and such. And we've got, some people who help us with various aspects, Japanese marketing consultant for that market, general marketing and PR support, various roles like that. But we're a fairly small company and fairly new. In my own free time, I don't have much of that lately because we're a new company, and so it's been a sort of wild journey setting things up. But in the moments I have, I spend time with my dogs and my wife.
Nice. Awesome. Well, yeah, I would say it was with everything that you're doing as essentially, a new company and whatnot. I can't imagine that you have too much time on your hands, even though most people are still kind of indoors and not getting out much in light of this whole pandemic. But hey, at least you're keeping busy and having fun with what you're doing. So that's awesome to hear.
Yeah. And we are having fun right now, though. Probably people will hear I'm a little bit sick. I have a bit of a cold, so still having fun, but a little bit less lately. And I do apologize for any coughing or hoarseness to my voice.
Well, no worries at all, and I'm sure people can understand and can probably relate in some cases if they're under the weather or sick as well. So, all right, well, you know what? We really appreciate you sharing that, but we're going to dig in a little bit further, and how we're going to do that is into the Q-Box round. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Q-Box round is simply just a series of random questions that I've prepared for Tim here, and he's going to give us his quick and fast answer for it. So, Tim, are you ready to enter the Q-Box round?
Sure.
All right. What's your favorite book?
The Silmarillion. Read it as a child, continue to read it every couple of years. Love it.
And I'm sorry, what is it again?
The Silmarillion. It's one of Tolkien's works.
Yes. Okay, I'm definitely familiar with that. I have not read it myself, but it's on my to-do list at some point in time.
It's got an element of less. I mean, it's not trying to be a novel. It's more like reading ancient myths. He sort of constructed ancient mythology, and it's wonderful to read.
Yeah, that's what I remember it as too. Cool. What's your biggest gaming pet peeve?
Well, I mean, I suppose that I'm not a fan of any game that has microtransactions or that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can relate with you on that. We've all heard the stories of some games that have people didn't like what they did with that. So,
yeah, I prefer the old model: sell a complete game for a nice price, and then maybe have expansions with defined content.
Yes, I completely agree. If you could be any animal, what would it be?
Probably a dog. I mean, I just love my dogs. Spend more time in the yard with them and such.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. The life of a dog is a pretty good one, and for you cat lovers out there too, I'm sure you could agree with the cat as well. The life of a dog or a cat is perfect. But yeah, That's a good one. What's your favorite food?
Anything fast lately because I've been so busy. So I guess a glass of milk probably.
Perfect. All right. And I know you're busy, but I imagine maybe you could squeeze in some time for this. But what are you playing right now for a game?
So you're right. I don't have nearly enough time to play now that I've actually started, working in the industry. But when I do play, I play games together with my wife. And so it's the sort of game that we can enjoy playing together, sort of like talk about as we go. And just recently we played a game, I think it was called Dominus, which is about managing a group of gladiators on Steam. I think that's it. I don't want to say the wrong name for it. Or Domina, probably Domina. I'm saying right. Sorry, Domina. Yeah, that's it. So it's like a pixel art indie simulation game where you manage gladiators and such. So, my wife, she takes the controls, but if she can't stand my sort of incessant checking to see what everyone's doing, it goes much faster than controlling it. But we sort of talk about it and build our little gladiator group together and have fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I remember seeing that before. I don't think they came out that long ago. But anyways, that sounds really cool and like a simulation gladiator game. Awesome. All right, man.
I think I was using. I think Dominus might be the male version, and Domina is the female version of the word in Latin or something like that. So I was probably showing my lack of education in Latin. You're a female. Play as a woman who owns a gladiator guild, so I probably embarrassed myself. All right, I'll get that out of the way early in the podcast.
No worries at all. Well, definitely appreciate you sharing a little bit more about yourself through the Q-Box round. But without further ado, we're going to get right into our main discussion for today, which is how to nail publisher negotiations. And now, before we get into this, Tim, I would actually like to provide a little bit more context why we're talking about publisher negotiations and such, especially when you're saying you're a relatively new publisher, but at the same time, you have a lot of background and experience with this to certain degrees. So I would, if you wouldn't mind, if you could elaborate a little bit more of your background outside of what you just do for Hooded Horse.
So prior to working in games, I was first a commercial litigator, which is sort of a lawyer who deals with contract disputes, mergers and acquisitions, internal corporate type disputes, that sort of thing. I attended Stanford Law School. I worked at a firm called Fulbright & Jaworski for a while. And then after that, I was a consultant for McKinsey & Company. McKinsey is a consulting group, so we'd go into various large corporations would hire us to go in and sort of evaluate how things are going, make suggestions for changes and the like. I also I also have a background in, I have two master's degrees, both from Harvard, one in East Asian regional studies and the other one in East Asian languages and civilizations. One sort of more focused on modern East Asian history, especially Chinese history, and one focused on ancient Chinese history.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And one thing I'd like to comment to that I think a lot of our listeners are very well familiar with, especially from previous guests that we've had on the show too, is it doesn't really mean anything in terms of, or I shouldn't say that. It means a lot where your background is from, and not necessarily has to be from games in order to show how much value and interesting perspectives you can have by being in this industry. I think a great classic example here is Victoria Tron, who is now the community manager, Inner Sloth, Among Us, and her background originally, I think, was going to medical school for a short period of time, and then she eventually made her way to community development. So again, I just want to emphasize that in general, but specifically with Tim here, he has definitely a lot of experience that I think when we get into today's topic of how to nail publisher negotiations, he's going to have a lot of interesting insight to share with us. Quite honestly, I'm not going to go any further here. I just want to get in with our kickoff question. So Tim, what's the first step that you think that indie devs should consider when looking for a publisher?
So I think that so if we're talking about the indie dev themselves going out and looking at the publishers rather than fielding inquiries from publishers to contact them, and I do think it should be. I've seen cases where, because I talk to a lot of people, where they haven't made the decision to look for a publisher, but a couple of publishers start emailing them, and so they start considering it because they got contacted. I think that really ultimately it should instead always be your own decision. Now, a contact from someone else should cause you to maybe make that inquiry, but you should never sort of just be looking for it because someone contacted you or just because you think you should. So the first step I would say is that you truly assess your situation, your game, where you are, whether you're ready, what the timing is, and what kind of publisher you're looking for. And then you go out and actively pursue what you've decided is the right strategy for you, rather than just sort of letting things happen.
Yeah, I think that's a good one too, because a lot of times, when people are thinking about a publisher and not really putting too much thought behind it, I think a lot of times at face value they're thinking, "Oh, I need funding, I need money," right? But what you're saying and something it makes complete sense and everything is really think about your needs and everything else in terms of in a way formulating a plan in terms of what you're looking for and that being the first step to then reach out, because otherwise if you don't have that plan and you're just reaching out aimlessly, you might not necessarily find a good publisher, or you might be getting into areas that you're not familiar with, and there's probably just a lot of things that can come out of that you wouldn't necessarily be prepared for, other than just with that single mindset of, oh, I need money. So I definitely like that.
And I'd also add, there's probably more bad publishers out there than there are good. So you do want to sort of be careful where you're looking. Because it's if you're just randomly seeing who contacts you or looking out there, you're more likely to come up with one who isn't going to do much for you. The other thing is that it is very hard to get significant funding. If you're an indie dev who hasn't done so before, now if you're an indie dev who's put out games in the past, has a track record, that's a different story. For those who are doing maybe their first commercial title, it actually can be really hard to get a publisher who is interested in giving you funding. And now, at Hooded Horse, we do development funding for our games, but there are good publishers who don't do development funding for first games, but they're still potentially good. At least I would consider them before certain other publishers that may be willing to give you some token amount of money, and it's nice to be offered funding. But if I were a dev and I were choosing between a publisher who had a really good track record with games in my field, who offered that kind of expertise, who, I got a really good, feeling of, and they were just, look, we're not going to give you development funding, but we'll do this job for you, I might take that over somebody who has not a good track record, but who is offering some token amount like $20,000 or $30,000, which can seem like a lot, but really isn't a lot. So yeah, I think that a lot goes into the funding is good when you can get it. And again, like I said, so far we've done funding for both of the projects that we've done, development funding. But it's not, it wouldn't be the only consideration I'd have, especially if it's only what's being offered is a relatively small amount. The track record of the publisher is probably one of the most important things.
Yeah, and I think you provide some good perspective there too, because you're like you mentioned like a token amount, a small amount, and at $30,000 to some people that can be very significant. But at the same